as you age, learning new things is key. Humans are meant to be on purpose. That's how they wake up in the morning. Please don't hate me because I'm old. Will you still love me now that I'm 66? Because we are made to feel that we are less than as we age. So when I wrote the article on LinkedIn about don't be caged by your age, it took off.
Ande Lyons, welcome to Make the Most. We're so excited to have you.
I am so delighted to be here, Cheryl. Thank you so much for having. I'm so excited for this edutaining and oh so delicious conversation.
I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation that widens the lens of entrepreneurship and who can do it and who should be doing it. So for those of you who are uninitiated to the Andeliciousness of Ande Lyons, I'm going to read out her bio just so you're up to speed on how amazing she is. An enthusiastic and experienced entrepreneur with 4 businesses to her credit, Ande Lyons is showing people that it's possible to make career pivots at any age. Through sharing her startup wisdom as host of the Startup Life Live show, which I believe was top 50 or is top 50 in business in the world, yes?
Well, in the startup, and also it, for a while was top 10 worldwide for startup podcasts.
Yes. So welcome, Ande fans. Ande has discovered this passion for podcasting. And I remember you telling me once, if podcasting had been around when I was younger, I would have been unstoppable. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I mean, when I was using video cameras in the 80s, and I thought, oh my gosh, the camera loves me. I should be doing this full time. But what am I going to do? Go down to the local TV station and say, hire me? No. So it took a while for technology to catch up.
To catch up with you. It's true. Well, Ande has recently hosted and produced a 30-episode podcast miniseries called Your Ink Story, where guests have shared stories behind their body art. And I have to say, I have no body art yet. There's still time. Do you have any body art?
No body art. But I'm telling you, for at least 20 years, I have asked folks, perfect strangers, would you be willing to share your ink story with me? Because I'm fascinated about the art and the stories. I know there were stories behind it, and I wanted to hear. And by the time they were done telling me, it's like, tissues, please. And I felt so close to them. And I really felt that human connection. And to me, that's what we're constantly trying to find anymore. We know what divides us, but what connects us? Well, many of the pieces of body art and inks that people put on their body is a reflection of a triumph, something they've overcome, or a loss, or a love of a pet, a love of a child, a love of another, a passion for anything. And those are human emotions, those are human needs, those are human experiences. So it goes beyond race, religion, politics, everything, to what we do have in common, which is our humanity.
That is so beautiful. So folks should definitely check that out. Her newest project, Don't Be Caged by Your Age, opens up the conversation of ageism to help people like yourself dissolve that internalized ageist beliefs that are keeping you from being, on your game, engaged, connected, and thriving after 65. So we'll definitely be touching on that topic. But first, from getting to know you and digging into your background a little bit more, I know that you've earned your MBA, then became a corporate lender, learned a lot, then pivoted to entrepreneurship, launching your businesses, and now into podcasting in sort of this, next stage of life. What can you tell us about, yourself, Ande, before all of this success?
I love that. Ande, the early days.
Exactly. The young Ande.
Given I'm the daughter of 2 folks who came of age during the Depression and World War II who earned their undergraduate degrees from Colgate and Skidmore, none of their 4 children went to college. We were great at country club activities, riding horses, skiing, tennis, golf, all those things, but nobody went to college. And at the age of 18, I went off for 6 years, hitchhiking and having incredible life-threatening experiences, but deepening my understanding of humanity. So when I came back to do my redo and said, okay, now I need to get serious, I actually went to a secretarial school, and which is what lots of women did. I went to the elite Catherine Gibbs, for anybody who's my age. I age out loud. I'm 67, almost 68. And what this did for me was it gave me an opportunity to be hired by founders. And I went to go work and sit outside the door of entrepreneurs who were running and growing and building businesses. And so I was the gatekeeper. I got to see who are the investors, what are all these departments, what are all the parts and pieces of running and growing and building a business, the harrowing days, the exciting days, everything. And meanwhile, I was going to school at night to earn my undergraduate degree when I learned about Simmons School of Management. And so at this time, it was an all-women's MBA program here in Boston, and they allowed a very small, like 1% of their student body to come in as what's called a non-traditional student, because they deeply understood how women can get sidetracked after high school. They can get moved off of where they should be going and getting educated and all of the things. And so I was so excited, but I knew that I was terrible at standardized testing. So I did take the GMATs, but I shored up the possibility of getting accepted by going to night school 4 nights a week for 4 hours, taking expository writing, taking algebra, and it was three semesters in one of these classes, so you can understand how intensive they were. Got A+ on both of them, and then I thought, well, I better really shore up my chances and take a statistics class. Well, here's the scoop. This school told me not once but twice, Andy, we don't accept students with GMAT scores this low. And I share this story because life can tell you no. Don't let that stop you. Find another way to get that door opened. And I knew I had great critical thinking, but I was terrible at standardized testing. So when they sent me the acceptance letter saying, hey, you are accepted, provided you get a B+ or better in your statistics class, I'm laughing because I had a 74 after the midterm, and I had to use statistics to figure out how do I get a B+ or better. But I hired a coach, a tutor, got really, really good at statistics, and aced the final, got a 94 as a final grade, so no problem. Made it happen. I should say 94 in the final, which helped get my grade up to the B+. With class participation and maybe generosity of the professor, I don't know. But it was such a huge win. And I say this because when I started the MBA program, I'll never forget where operations was in the first semester, and I was not doing well in operations. So I sat down with the professor and I said, look, I'm a right brain gal. And that was the perception I had of myself, Cheryl. Oh, I'm just, great personality, always having a good time. And he said, excuse me, Andy, but you have one of the strongest left brains I've actually met, but nobody taught you how to use it. Let me teach you how to use it. And it was this matrix moment where my whole body sort of went, it shifted, and I went, gosh, he's right. I am all about strategy. I am all about systems and procedures. And it changed the trajectory of my life. And it really changed how I perceived my life and how I showed up. And wow, did I nail that MBA program. But you brought up that I went into banking. I want folks to know that I didn't go into banking because I was a fit for banking. I had to do some fancy footwork for that. I went into banking because I wanted to shore up my resume, and I wanted to do financial analysis on all types of industries. And when you go into any commercial lending program at a bank, that's what you do. You are crunching numbers all the numbers, all the ratios. You're learning all the things. And that helped me. But by the time 1992 rolled around, 3 years in banking, I had to move on. And I have not been hireable since.
Unbought and unbossed, as they say. Well, Andy, what you talked about in terms of, getting those no's, when you were first pursuing your MBA, that really resonated with me because I was turned down by the first 2 graduate programs that I applied to. And then I reconfigured, thought of myself differently, kind of, the way that you did, and went for an MBA. And at the time, there wasn't this, business for good mindset. There were only 2 folks who were nonprofit focused in my program out of 50. And the rest of them thought we were really weird. Like, why are you here? And, both of us said, look, we just think there's a way to use these skills for something better.
Yeah, Cheryl. I mean, in a lot of the MBA programs down the road from me, they're focused on shareholder value. This is, you go in, you learn the skills to make sure the capitalist world keeps moving forward in a way that shareholders get rewarded. And I love that you were always focused on business for good. Hello.
Yeah, a little, like you, a little maybe before my time that way. But, short, zooming forward, to the present day, what led you to start Startup Life Live? And, what were the average ages of, the folks that you were talking to?
Well, having founded 4 businesses of my own, I was part of many accelerator programs, Mass Challenge, Entrepreneurship for All. I was mentoring founders, and I was co-hosting a monthly pitch event here in Boston called Founders Live, where founders had 99 seconds to pitch their value prop to a live audience, and we had investors on the panels. Very exciting. When COVID hit and the pandemic shut everything down here in Boston, so I said to my co-host AJ, I said, Andy, let's take it live. Let's use StreamYard and go live. And he's like, say what? I had been live streaming since 2012, so to me it was a no-brainer. I'd been following the founders of StreamYard. In fact, I was fond of saying I have shoes older than they are. And they had done such a good job in creating a stable platform. I said, let's do it. So we had our March pitch event. We had 5 founders, 2 investors, and we had people tuning in across YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. That was a lot to juggle, right? But what I learned from that experience is that my extrovert nature was going to need her batteries recharged through conversation and connection. And since I was not going to be seeing anybody, I needed to think about a show that I could do. And I had done prior shows, but not in the startup world. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go and start Startup Life Live and interview founders and interview things that we need to know to help us grow. At the same time, Cheryl, I was part of a cohort in a group called Founder Gym. And I was one of 75 folks, and I was one of 4 whites in the group when George Floyd was murdered. And what I heard from listening to everyone was that the representation for Black and brown founders was very low. And I said, okay, well, I am going to be 110% focused on diverse founders for this platform. And that's when I shifted, and I went twice a week live and found tech founders, food founders, all kinds of founders from around the world, from Singapore, India, Switzerland, Germany, Thailand. I mean, I was willing to get up at all hours to chat with them, as they were as well. And I learned so much from that experience. But it was mostly for me to provide edutainment to founders so that they knew they weren't alone, so that they understood that all founders were experiencing a high level of uncertainty, of not knowing what they were doing and trying to figure things out on the fly. the acronyms. What is MVP? What is LTV CAC? What is, all the things that people throw out all the time, and many founders are scratching their heads. But also to help them understand that founders at night sleep like babies. They wake up every 2 hours crying. That's the journey. And so we have a lot of this mythology, I should be so, and this is what I heard all the time, I should be much further along than I am. I said, really? Who said? Who said? If you look at what many businesses go through, it is the 10 to 15 year overnight success. The first 5 years, you're just figuring out how to be an owner versus an employee. And then you're figuring out how to build your team, how to get the money, how to make your customers happy, whatever that looks like. And then you're going to start going into the enterprise stage. And that's a whole nother ballgame. And there are so many challenges along the way, especially for the young founder. I remember hearing an interview with a guy who founded Squarespace. He had never worked anywhere. So he didn't even know about hiring. He didn't know nothing from nothing. And so, so that was the purpose of that show, to have someone like you on talking about how you build the mindset, how you get through the whole experience without throwing yourself out the basement window. It's a remarkable journey, and if there's one thing I consistently said to folks was, you always win when you launch a business, no matter what happens. Because the failure rate is really, really high. And what's going to happen is you're going to go, okay, I learned from that first business. Here I go. I'm going to start another one. Or you're going to go, oh, this is not for me. I'm out. You're going to go back as an employee. But boy, are you bringing incredible new skills that you didn't even know you had. Because when you found a business, you find out things about yourself that's better than any personal development program out there. And better than any MBA program out there, right, Cheryl?
Oh, absolutely. Most small businesses fail, but you are still a success, because you have picked up all of these executive level skills, that you wouldn't have, had the opportunity to do so. And, I live in Silicon Valley, failure is normal here. It's almost expected that, you're not a really serious entrepreneur unless, it all blew up, at least once. Because, there is that tenacity, right? People respect the fact that it didn't work out. I learned a lot from that, and I'm applying all of those learnings to this next phase.
You're in a lab, doing chemistry experiments when you are building a business. And if you can stay an observer and go, okay, that didn't work out, and quickly move and try something new and figure out what will work and really have a deep understanding of failure or mistakes, teach you what doesn't work so that you can focus on what does, you have a mindset. The number one ingredient, though, Cheryl, that I saw in all the founders was they had never met a problem they didn't love. Fierce problem solvers were the common factor. And it's almost like they took joy in the challenge. What? That's a problem. I'm going to figure out that solution. So I did notice that trend among all the founders.
Well, and, I've been on a lot of different podcasts, and, your podcast, hugely popular, of course, but not the Joe Rogan experience, right? It wasn't fetishizing kind of, young white guys of, various ages. You really, I think did a great job of, providing this wide array so that no matter who you were, eventually you would see yourself in a founder. What would you say, in terms of, older founders, older female founders in particular, what were there any sort of special triumphs, or challenges that they faced?
The older founder comes with a breadth and depth of prior lived experiences. So they have a greater wisdom for managing this roller coaster ride. They're less flappable in the sense that they've seen so much of humanity in all the places that they've worked over the years, that they're used to seeing this. I had recently interviewed Fran Meyer. Okay, she's a well-known founder. You know Fran. And I had asked her that question, what's the difference about starting a tech company in your 60s? And she says, well, when you're older, you make mistakes, but you don't make major F-ups, right? You don't have the things that will really blow the business up. You can recover from your mistakes when you're older because they're not going to be that bad.
No, that totally makes sense. So what made you shift gears, from, Startup Life Live to Don't Be Caged by Your Age? It's a podcast that champions, of course, living your best life despite your age. It's shattering ageism and age-related expectations. But why did you think this particular topic was important to focus on now?
The startup ecosystem does tend to be young, all right, and kind of glorifies youth and youth culture. When I turned 66, I realized I needed to come out about my age. I never told anybody my age. I have a youthful energy, right? So people, and my biggest fans in the startup ecosystem were always under 30. They'd say, Andy, I want to sit beside you. Andy, you're the most fascinating person in here. I'm like, look, I could be not just your mother, but your grandmother. And they're like, I don't care. But what I would hear people say, very ageist remark, which would be, explain your business to investors as if you were telling your grandmother. And I took offense at that because we've been coding and building tech companies since the 70s and punched cards. Hello. Don't think that we don't understand tech. I do not like that ageist conversation going on. And so when I wrote a post for LinkedIn when I turned 66, and folks in the U.S., there's that Route 66 sign. I got it off Amazon. I have the picture. I'm holding it. But the look on my face is really, please don't hate me because I'm old. Will you still love me now that I'm 66? Because we are made to feel that we are less than as we age. And it starts not just in society, but institutions. They figure you're sliding into home plate in your 50s and no longer are ambitious, no longer worth an investment of the company in your skills, that you are permafrost. And so you can take that on. That is indoctrinated in you. And all of a sudden, as you're aging, you're like, well, who's going to listen to me? I'm in my 60s or my 70s or 80s. In the U.S., Canada, Australia, countries like this do not revere your wisdom. They want you to go out to pasture. And pastures are for horses. So when I wrote the article on LinkedIn about Don't Be Caged by Your Age, it took off. It was a viral post. And the comments were so enlightening from folks who were really feeling the pain of being invisible now that they had, quote, aged out. And I started the article off saying, when I turned 50, I said, that's it. My entrepreneurship days are done. I'm going to hang up my tiara. It's for a younger person. I can't be doing this anymore. 16 years later, I've had 2 more businesses. And so what I also learned in the comments were people who were continuing on that were entrepreneurs, or people who had been 30 years in insurance or some other industry who started working on one thing that led to another. For example, one guy said, I started a garden and then I noticed all the bees, and then I thought, wow, bees. And I got some hives and I thought, oh my gosh, honey. What am I going to do with all this honey? Now he's a honey distributor. That wasn't on his plan. But I was so curious about all the remarks, and being a boomer, 1956 here, I started to think, I'm sure others are feeling this way, this invisibility, this that you're less than, we don't want to hear from you, see you bye. And so it was percolating for a long time. I left the startup ecosystem in July of 2023. I did a little segue, a 30 series podcast called Your Ink Story. We talked about that. But this was percolating, and I knew that in 2024 I would be launching this and entering what I call the pro-age movement and the age-positive movement has been so enlightening and empowering. And I will tell you, aging out loud has been liberating. In my age group, we grew up where you did not mention your age as a woman. You didn't ask a woman her age. And when you can look at yourself in the mirror, and instead of seeing the wrinkles, the brown spots, the barnacles, whatever on your face, and instead say, of course I look like this. I have been alive this long, and it's okay. It's a whole new world and a level of radical self-love we do not hear talked about enough. Everything is anti-aging. What, you're aging? You got to stop that. I have a book behind me written by a wonderful artist and a poet that says, help, I can't stop aging. That's how you end up feeling, like something is wrong with you. And one of my guests recently on the show, Judith Kernick, episode 11, she, high performer, C-suite, her whole life she was a classical violinist. Leonard Bernstein was in her Rolodex. He gave her a tour of the White House. We're talking high-level woman. When she got into her 60s, it was often, who am I going to be at this age, right? We were so identified with who we are up until that point, and all of a sudden, we have a different energy level. We have a different way we want to experience the world. And she talks about the energy portfolio, which I found so fascinating. But she was afraid to share our conversation, even though her clients know how old she is, because she's now an executive transformation coach. So she takes those high-performing C-suites, attorneys, high-level folks, and help them reimagine what the next 20, 30 years will look and feel like. Very important thing to go through. But she was afraid to share the episode because I ask all my guests, if you're going to be on the show, you got to be out loud about your age. And so she confessed, like 4 weeks later, she goes, I confess I was afraid to share this incredible conversation with Andy because I was afraid to share my age. And the responses she got. So dissolving this fear of aging, this I feel badly, I'm ashamed, all of those things, and also shattering the ageist belief that you are no longer ambitious, that you don't have any more dreams. Humans are meant to be on purpose. That's how they wake up in the morning. And to find out what that looks like for you in what we're calling the Renaissance period. 55 to 80 is the Renaissance period now. We're not talking retirement. From 81 to 100 is legacy. And then anything over 100 is extra. But
bonus.
It's fascinating out there. And you think about how generations of talent are being wasted right now because they're not being hired. There's a little eye roll moment for me as I watch white men for the first time in their lives face discrimination because their panties are all in a twist. What? I'm 58. I'm 62. How come I'm not getting hired?
Yeah.
Join the party.
Well, exactly. I come from a, very specific subculture, the African American community. And I would say, in that community, age is actually, considered a good thing, particularly in a woman. There's the auntie, right? Which is maybe in that sort of 40 to 65-ish. A classic example would be this Rosa Parks Barbie that sits in my office, right? Like this is Barbie, right? But this is, people buy, and she ain't young, she's got her experience there. Or, there's a whole genre of extremely popular top 40 songs that are Black men writing love songs to their mothers, their grandmothers, and sometimes, in the case of Outkast, their baby's mama's mama. So, and then there's maybe like elder, there's not necessarily a name, but, right, you reach a certain age where, the words that you speak are considered sacred, even if they don't totally make sense. It's just,
right.
It's just, you have survived so many things that wisdom, right? Of like, here I am at the beginning of my journey or midway, and you're, at this totally different stage. Teach me, because I'm trying to get through this. So,
there's a reference.
Yeah, there's very much a reverence, and I'm now that I've reached auntie age myself, I enjoy being called Ms. Cheryl. Like that's fine. If you want to add a little respect, put a little top off, a little appreciation for what I've been through, I'll take it, 100%. I mean, do you find that mainstream American culture is changing? You talked about the pro-age movement, but at least in entertainment, I see whether it's the Real Housewives. Those women are usually 40 and up. One on Real Housewives of Potomac, she celebrated on the show her triple 20 out loud and proud, 60 years old, triple 20. So, are you seeing a shift, in the culture and then, in entrepreneurship?
Well, yeah, I'm seeing a shift in other cultures. I'm seeing a real shift in Europe. You're seeing older women on the cover of Vogue, women in their 60s and 70s being celebrated and seeing the beauty that's happening. However, I share a lot of shorts on YouTube and on my Instagram Reel and TikTok. And one of them is Andy McDowell getting interviewed by an Italian reporter who said and asked her, how does it feel to be losing your beauty? How does it feel to have lost your beauty? Let me rephrase that. And Andy was shocked. She thought maybe there was a language barrier and she hadn't heard it correctly, but she had. And she goes, I didn't lose my beauty. It's still shining in from inside me, right out through my eyes, right? I think, especially with white women, they tend to be much more hung up about how they look, right? Their weight, their body shape, the wrinkles, all of that, than are women of color. But there's, different representation is happening. I interviewed Mildred Mills, episode 2, who at the age of 68 wanted to tell the story of growing up in Alabama, the third of 17 children from the same mother and father, and what it was like to pick cotton with her grandmother, and the stories of how she lived life and got to where she was. So she went back to school and earned her master's in creative writing at the age of 72. And she knew that she wanted to publish, but in order to publish, you better have a platform. So she has a podcast called My Cotton Patch Moment. And my gosh, just her fierceness, of course I'm going to do this, was so evident. I admire our Asian culture and the African American culture that has that reverence for the wisdom that comes with aging. The white population is still really suffering from be quiet, we don't need you anymore. And the voices are rising, we're getting better, and I think that when we get to the point where we see people for their contribution, for their connection, what they're bringing to the world, then we'll have overcome this barrier. But ageism is one of the most socially acceptable discriminations out there. And one of the ways we can stop doing this is to stop buying the cards that make fun of older people, right? And LinkedIn, I think it was about 4 months ago, had an ad about really basically how stupid elders were with technology. And, oh yeah, it was so bad. And again, we've been doing technology before your parents, whoever wrote this ad, have been doing technology. And I think what's important is also understanding as you age, learning new things is key. There are people rocking it in their 70s and 80s with technology. And whether it's launching their own business, a platform, using AI, gamification, all the things. I'll be honest, I've had to check my bias. I was interviewing a woman in her 70s who said she was a gamer, and I immediately thought, what, bridge, bingo, what? What are we talking about here? No, she's been shooting zombies since, when they used mainframes for gaming. And she shoots zombies for leisure now, 4 or 5 hours a day in her 70s. And she's talking about making sure assisted living places start up in their Wi-Fi so more people can be gaming, because gaming is a great way to stay connected. And that's the biggest challenge for any entrepreneur, as well as anybody aging, is staying connected. Entrepreneurs get very hyper-focused, Cheryl, as you know, but it's also very lonely, because who are you turning to talk to? You can't talk to your team members. You can't talk to your vendors or investors, right? You have to have some kind of team who's listening to you. It can be very, very lonely. The same thing with aging. You can feel left out and find there's a lack of community. And maybe folks have watched that Blue Zone show, right? On Netflix, talking about the blue zones. It's not what they eat. It's not the air they breathe. It's their social network. The people who care whether they live or die. That keeps them aging that long.
Well, a huge focus for our organization, the Impact Seat Foundation, is all about, building that social network, right? And building that sense of community, for, senior female business leaders, right? Precisely because of what you describe. It can be really lonely at the top, and where are the people who are having similar experiences to you that you can turn to when you need advice? So, after, say, age 50, age 60, what do you think, is the kind of community that those people need most? What feels like inclusion, once you're over 65, in a way that's not patronizing, condescending, making fun of you, in some way, what feels good?
Intergenerational community. It's absolutely key. For an example, if anybody's seen The Intern with Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro, that's what I'm talking about. You need your friendships in all the different age groups and connections, and having conversations and celebrations with all ages. It's what helps you stay wired instead of retired. It's so important. And how do you find those? I'm a huge fan of, certainly if you're in entrepreneurship and you're looking for support, the Impact Seat is going to make sure you're connected with different age groups. But also, we have a wonderful platform in the world called Meetup, and even Eventbrite. You can go on and see what's happening in the world. You can see what's happening in your community and go to some events. See if there's something of interest for you. And if you can't find your community, build one and then put it up on Meetup or Eventbrite. I just launched a community for that reason for podcasters. It's called the New England Podcaster Group. And I created the space. I said, look, I'm going to be here once a month. There's a wonderful facility we use. It's a cable community access, has beautiful TV studio, podcasting studio. And I just said, we'll see who shows up. Every month I'll be there. And wow, I couldn't believe how many people drove from Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut to show up in person and talk about podcasting and learn from each other. And we had a featured speaker. Sometimes that's what you have to do, is to build that community. But find it and make sure it's intergenerational. And then also, Cheryl, you brought up something really important, that condescending voice. So when someone says, oh, sweetie, and they're not going to do this to an elder man. They're going to only do it to the elder woman primarily. Oh, sweetie, let me help you with that. Like, you're not a grown-ass woman, right? You're all of a sudden, what, am I 5? No, give the elder the respect. There are groups out there that are empowering, maturing women. And I keep focusing on the women because the men haven't been as challenged as they age as women have. And so after years of sexism, racism, now it's ageism on top of it. It's like, wow. But it helps you navigate. It helps you find the words to use when you have been belittled as an elder. And, for me, for having those words in that script is very important. Otherwise, I'm going to have them hold my shot of tequila and I'm going to go into the fight.
I wouldn't, think that I would win a fight against you, Miss Andy. Okay. I don't think so. No, thank you. Well, I just want to ask, one more question, which is, I'm sure there's someone listening right now, who is, starting to feel a little more wired rather than retired, starting to, be curious, about starting something new, maybe a side hustle, maybe a whole business, but they worry, but I'm older, right? I don't want to risk my 401k. I don't want to, risk looking embarrassed. What Andelicious advice would you give them?
Well, no one on their deathbed said, gosh, I wish I didn't try so many things. Do it. The biggest regret people have in the ICU or in their last days of hospice are I wish I tried that. You are going to feel so much better about yourself. You're going to feel more confident. You're going to feel more alive and valuable. And launching a business, whatever that looks like. Okay, there's a lot of glorification of entrepreneurship. Whatever it is that you do to bring income into your home through selling a product or a service. One of my favorite interviews so far is Charlotte, who was a mother. Being a mother was her life calling. But then as her children aged out, what else was she going to do? Well, she set up a wonderful, a dancing pole business. She did in her 50s, had a great time with that. But there is a transition that happens from 50s into 60s where some people actually get a little sad and even depressed because they don't know how to manage this aging process. Please get help for that. What Charlotte did is she had always loved modeling. She became a model. Now, I'm not talking, she never had been a model. She went to classes, learned how to model. She loves modeling upcycled clothing. Vintage clothing, today's current clothing. She's out of Toronto. At the age of 65, she just got signed as a model, a working model. There's inspiration out there. There's Sandra Allison, who at the age of 58 got bumped and could not find a job, was so frustrated by year 2 of trying to get in someplace and ageism was preventing her. She went and got training in how to write resumes and how to build a resume so no one will know that you you're aging out, so to speak. And she created a phenomenal resume services business, including how to get on boards. And she's 72. She's the gamer I was talking about. She can't see out of one eye. Arthritis has ruined her ability to walk or drive as well. No problem. She just hired another person for her business. See, this is what happens too. Is sometimes as we're aging, how can I start a business? I can't see. I can't walk. There's physical things that can prevent you. You can still add value through a business. There's ways to find a problem that needs solving. Sandra's is how to make sure you don't get kicked out and spit out when your resume is submitted. The tracking systems can scan your resume and kick you out because they say, oh, this is a 50-year-old plus, so we're not going to interview this person. No. There's ways to find ownership out in the world for yourself and provide a service, a product, something that you've always wanted to do. And boy, are there folks out there that can support you, whether it's an accelerator program or SCORE. There's so many ways. The problem with our society, and this is where men can suffer the most at this age, is you'll hear a guy say, oh, I wish I had learned golf when I was young, or I wish I had learned to do that when I was young. I can't do it now, because they want to win, right? For many folks, they are afraid. That it's being afraid that you're going to make a mistake, that you're going to fail, you're not going to know what to do, and you supposedly should know what to do at this age. No, this is new. This is a wonderful experiment. You're going to have a phenomenal experience. I cannot encourage folks enough to try and get the support that they need around the community, find other entrepreneurs, find community, and get the support you need.
I love that. You know, when I was growing up, the aunties and the elders, they described this time of life as the change of life. Right? That and it was really described as a change that, was more, internal and spiritual than physical. The physical was a symptom, right? That something is happening inside you. And, I didn't know that menopause was the same thing as that. Like, someone kind of had to explain to me that those two were connected. But, I think that there is so much more to give. Right? That term, change of life, meaning, you are, the caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Right. And so I think that, try something new. You have so much more to give than you were young because, of all that you've learned. I think
it's the Renaissance period.
The Renaissance period, right? The rebirth of who you are and can be.
There's a wonderful book out there called Don't Retire, Rewire. And within the book are exercises. It's written by a woman, Jerry Sedler, who's had a phenomenal career. And she's a data gal, and she interviewed people from Des Moines to Dubai about this time of life. And wow, the exercises in the book alone will help you find your passion and fuel it with something that suits your personality and can fill your pocketbook.
I love it. Double trouble. Well, I have learned a lot, from you. That sounds like an incredible resource, that book, but you are a human living resource. Thank you so much for being with me and everyone else today here on Make the Most.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. And also to those listening, you have more to give. We want more of you. Don't let limitations keep you from bringing your fully expressed, oh so delicious self to the world at this stage of your life.
And where can people find you, Ande Lyons?
That's right, ANDELYONS. I'm everywhere. And of course, please visit Don't Be Caged by Your Age on all the platforms or the website, don'tbecagedbyyourage.com.
All right. Thanks so much, Ande.
Thanks for having me, Cheryl.